Millions of people suffer from food-related illnesses each year. The CDC estimates that out of 48 million cases, 38 million people didn't know what they ate that made them sick.
This overcrowding in detention is becoming critical. It's a powder keg waiting to go off in an explosion of unacceptable behavior.
Don't bitch to me, boss man. Thanks to the latest budget cuts, I'm down to using grade F meat.
It's a question as old as fast food itself.
Where's the beef?
A question that's built the reputation of some restaurants.
It's 100% pure beef.
And hasn't helped others at all. Now it's being asked of Taco Bell in the form of a lawsuit claiming those beef tacos and burritos aren't what they seem. The suit, filed in a California court, claims Taco Bell menu items advertised with seasoned beef actually contain a filling made up of mostly, quote, non-meat substances, including soybean oil and silicon dioxide that wouldn't measure up to USDA standards to be called beef.
According to the test that we've taken, the taco meat filling is, again, about 35% meat.
Mainly soy and oats. And then there's lots of other stuff in there that I don't even know how to pronounce.
Attorney Dee Miles is suing the fast food chain, claiming it's engaging in false advertising. He says Taco Bell's meat mixture in their taco, burrito, and other products does not meet the FDA's requirements.
In order for it to be a beef product, it has to be, according to the federal government, 70% beef, 30% fat. That's the minimal requirement to be beef.
According to the lawsuit, Taco Bell seasoned beef actually contains, among other ingredients, water, isolated oat product, wheat oats, soy lecithin, maltodextrin, anti-dusting agent, autolyzed yeast extract, modified cornstarch, and sodium phosphate, as well as beef and seasonings.
Like they say, you get what you pay for. And that's why the tacos are 39 cents, 49 cents.
I'm pretty sure you know what you're paying for when you come to Taco Bell. If you want real beef, you probably go somewhere else.
Doesn't sound too healthy.
Would it stop you from eating their food?
I don't know. Probably not.
Hot dogs, bacon, hams, and sausage can cause cancer. That's according to the International Agency for Research on Cancer, part of the World Health Organization. Experts are now saying there is now sufficient evidence that eating processed meats is, quote, carcinogenic to humans. In other words, these processed meats on your screen cause cancer. They say the risk of developing colorectal cancer is small, but it rises depending on how much processed meat you eat. The report also finds that red meat, like beef, pork, and lamb, probably cause cancer too. But the link to cancer isn't as strong as processed meats. With processed meats, they are now sure they cause cancer.
It's actually mechanically separated poultry.
That sounds delicious.
And this substance that you see here, which is known as poultry paste, is used in mass-produced chicken nuggets.
Oh.
So you would think like, oh, what's the big deal? It looks like finely ground chicken,
okay.
Right? Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that back in the 1960s, meat producers wanted to find a way to increase their profits, and they wanted to find a way to use the meat that's left behind, like tendons, meat that's stuck on bones, eyeballs, muscle tissue, all this part of the chicken that we used to toss out.
Right.
Okay? So what this machine does is you put all these parts into it, and it grinds it all up. And then they use this paste in chicken nuggets. They can also do this with pork. So a lot of times they'll use it in bologna, or they'll use it in hot dogs.
Okay. And so what did they do?
Okay.
They ammonia? They put ammonia on?
Okay, so this doesn't seem like, even knowing that they put tendons and eyeballs and muscle tissue, maybe that doesn't gross you out. But what they do to make this matter taste good is disgusting, okay? So first of all, it's crawling in bacteria, so they wash it with ammonia.
Okay, great.
And then the ammonia makes it taste really, really bad, so then they use artificial flavoring, and then since it's a weird pink color, they'll use artificial dyes.
Right. And by the way, why is it pink, right? That's a strange color for meat to be. My guess is a lot of blood got mixed into there.
Ew.
Okay, I'm just guessing. I don't know that. That's not in the story, okay? But here's where they lost me. Ammonia. Okay, the minute they said they were mixing ammonia into it, I was like, disaster.
An expert panel under the World Health Organization looked at more than 800 studies and classified processed meat as carcinogenic. That includes all meat preserved by smoking, curing, salting, or with chemicals to improve shelf life. Even if it's organic, evidence shows things like bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and sliced meat can cause colon cancer. Researchers say eating a 50-gram serving every day will increase your risk by 18%. That's roughly 5 to 6 slices of deli meat. There were also findings of unprocessed red meat. Beef, veal, pork, lamb, and goat are now listed as probably carcinogenic. Evidence shows associations to various cancers.
Longtime viewers of last night's show know that yesterday I talked about hot dogs, a subject near and dear to my heart because they're lodged in my arteries. And as I mentioned last night, a shocking investigation has found that after testing 75 brands of hot dogs, 2% of them contained human DNA. That's right. Some of those hot dogs are actually hot dogs. Now, the report doesn't specify the source of the human DNA. Is it hair? Is it fingernails? Did a lonely factory worker stay late one night and seduce a sausage casing machine? Could your pig in the blanket have a bun in the oven? Who knows? Folks, this news completely changes America's love affair with the all-beef Frank. Or should I say, the all-Frank beef.
Processed meats. Studies show they could be serious trouble. Of course, we know the concern with hot dogs and bacon. Multiple studies found regularly eating even small amounts of those processed meats increases your risk of type 2 diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. But the health concerns go way beyond those.
It's the same for any cold cuts: roast beef, ham, salami, turkey, even organic. It's all processed meat.
Food scientists at Consumer Reports tested 31 varieties of deli meat for nitrates and nitrites, which are used to prevent bacterial growth and add flavor. They may be linked to cancer. Ciara's testing found that among the meats labeled cured and uncured, the nitrate and nitrite levels were essentially the same. The testing found even meat labeled no nitrates contained some. Also concerning, some cold cuts Consumer Reports tested contain coloring agents that may also pose health risks. And not surprising, many of the samples had high levels of sodium.
Gerald Zernstein grinds his own hamburger these days. Why? Because this former USDA scientist, now whistleblower, knows that 70% of the ground beef we buy at the supermarket contains something he calls pink slime. Beef trimmings that were once used only in dog food and cooking oil, now sprayed with ammonia to make them safe to eat, and then added to most ground beef as a cheaper filler. It was Zernstein who, in a USDA memo, first coined the term pink slime, and is now coming forward to say he won't buy it.
It's economic fraud. It's not fresh ground beef. It's a substitute. It's a cheap substitute being added in.
Zernstein and his fellow USDA scientist Carl Custer both warned against using what the industry calls lean, finely textured beef and is widely known now as pink slime. But their government bosses overruled them.
Why didn't you consider it beef?
Because it was a salvage product.
Leftovers?
Fat that had been heated at low temperature and the excess fat spun out.
Here's how it's done. Those waste trimmings are gathered, simmered at low heat to make it easier to separate fat from muscle, put in a centrifuge and spun to finish the separation. Next, the mixture is sent through pipes where it's sprayed with ammonia gas to kill bacteria, and finally compressed into bricks and flash frozen for shipment to meat packers and grocery stores where it's added to most ground beef. And it doesn't have to appear on the label, because over objections of its own scientists, USDA officials with links to the beef industry labeled pink slime meat.
The undersecretary said, it's pink, therefore it's meat.
Jess enjoys a cooked breakfast. He eats one about 3 times a week, and he has for years.
Had bacon, sausage, egg, beans, toast. I normally get bigger actually, but I only ate about an hour ago.
But a new study says his habit is putting him at risk of a rare form of cancer. Researchers in Sweden say eating just 50 grams of processed meat a day, roughly 2 rashers of bacon, can increase the risk of pancreatic cancer by 19%. And if your appetite is bigger, so is the risk. Eating 100 grams raises that chance to 38%. And the danger keeps increasing with every extra portion. The chances of getting cancer of the pancreas are low, but so are the survival rates. The disease is usually only diagnosed at an advanced stage and kills 80% of people in less than a year.
It's the meat industry's dirty secret, a way of turning the scraps too small to sell as a premium steak back into a juicy, plump eye fillet to sell for a premium price. So clever, you'll never tell. Not even an expert can.
Before, you didn't even pick that as a join, though, did you?
It doesn't even tear through the join. A bit hard to tell, isn't it?
Butcher James Faulkner runs Queensland Natural Beef Company, an organisation dedicated to using as few additives in meat from paddock to plate as possible. But tonight, he's exposing how some parts of the industry are able to trick their customers and use whatever it takes.
Yeah. I've just got some fine diced beef and my special enzyme. I'm just going to mix it up a bit.
Why have we got the masks on?
Because it's dangerous. See that? Don't breathe that in.
This powder is transglutaminase enzyme, otherwise known as meat glue. Meat glues come in a number of forms, some produced by cultivating bacteria, the others, the primary ingredient comes from the blood plasma of pigs and cattle, specifically the coagulant which causes blood to clot. In the food industry, it has amazing properties.
So just got a little bit here, about a teaspoonful.
Yep.
Just over the top like that. And with our gloves on, of course, we mix it up.
Then roll it in plastic film and refrigerate. 6 hours later, you have a solid piece of meat.
And essentially, you've got a reborn, rebirthed thigh fillet.
More or less, yeah.
Ours uncooked is easy to spot the difference, but cooked is another story.
Okay, so the meat glue one is on the right, and the real McCoy is on the left.
And it's not just beef. Pork, lamb, fish and chicken are all stuck back together using this glue.
It looks like one piece of chicken.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yep.
But hard to tell, isn't it?
Particularly that.
On the grill, it's even harder to pick.
So that's the real McCoy. Give this a burl. Nice and tender, nicely salted. All right, let's go for the meat glue. I can't tell the difference.
Pretty good, but potentially dangerous. Microbiologist Glenn Pinner.
If this food is sold or represented as a solid piece of steak and you cook it rare, you're really leaving yourself open to get food poisoning.
Once you glue two pieces together, it's difficult to cook thoroughly those parts that were on the outside but are now on the inside.
The amount of bacteria on a steak that has been put together with meat glue is hundreds of times higher.
We had no idea how guarded a secret this was until we started contacting restaurateurs and butchers to ask them about the use of meat glue. Many of them didn't want to speak for fear of upsetting their suppliers, creating bad blood in an industry that has become very clever at using this product.
Are you just shaking your head?
A little bit. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
This cube roll we bought from a wholesaler that produces stuck-together steaks en masse. Their effort's so good, James, our butcher, couldn't tell even when it was raw. It's even harder in the restaurant, which are some of the biggest users of glued meat. And chances are, unless you're a vegetarian, you're eating it on a regular basis. But with current labelling laws, neither butchers nor your local eatery have to tell you you're eating chicken glued together with cow's blood or beef held together by pig.
A new study from the British Journal of Cancer shows a link between processed meat and pancreatic cancer. According to the study, for every 50-gram serving you have a day, your risk goes up 19%.
Well, what this study found was that for every 50 grams of processed meat that people ate every day, they had an increased risk of around 20%, slightly less than 20%. So we're talking about if you eat a couple of rashers of bacon each day, then you have a 20% higher risk of pancreatic cancer than someone who eats no meat at all.
Yeah, so on the face of it, that sounds like quite a major hike, because there are people who would routinely eat a cooked breakfast every day.
Well, the reason why this is so important is because pancreatic cancer is such a difficult cancer to treat.
Do you know how many people suffer from pancreatic cancer? Because that amount of meat a day won't sound, as Charlie says, to most people like an awful lot, and would be very commonly eaten, and would suggest that pancreatic cancer is quite common.
Well, it's the 10th most common cancer in the UK, with about 8,000 people developing it each year. And the sad thing about pancreatic cancer is that also each year about 8,000 people die from the disease. It's got quite a low survival rate compared to other cancers.
Looks bright red and juicy, but this piece of meat is not safe to eat. Believe it or not, it's been sitting out for 11 days. So how could it still look so fresh? It's because it's being packed and gassed in a special process that most people never heard about, using a harmless amount of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen, which keeps the meat looking fresh and bright red.
How long through this process can you make a piece of meat continue to look bright red?
To look red. A long time. A long time.
2 days, 3 days?
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Weeks.
Dr. Ed Mills is a professor of meat science at Penn State University, and he says the color of the meat doesn't necessarily indicate it's fresh.
The consumer can't believe their eyes.
Because the consumer can't tell to look at the product that this is 2 weeks old or 3 weeks old. They have to look at the sell-by date on the package.
To demonstrate how well carbon monoxide gas works, we left 2 cuts of lamb out at room temperature. One was gas-packed, the other no gas. After a few days, the untreated meat turns a dark, unappealing color. But the gas-packed meat stays red, even after being left out for 8 days. The only visible sign of spoilage is the package puffing out and a bad odor when opened. We had the meat analyzed in a lab, and it's no surprise that both cuts are loaded with bacteria.
Probably after a few days in room temperature, it's not fresh, but it looks fresh.
Without refrigerated storage, I can't assure that the product is safe to consume.
All of the meat that I see here in this display wasn't actually cut here.
No.
None of it's cut here.
Nope.
Do the customers really know that there's gas in some of this packaging?
I don't believe they do know.
They don't know that.
It's like in the Army, you know, don't ask, don't tell.
I mean, this is not shocking news to me as a gastroenterologist. We know that processed meats do increase your risk of colorectal cancer, probably stomach cancer as well. But for the World Health Organization to come out and call it a class 1 carcinogen really raises awareness to everyone out there that you are what you eat, and there are certain foods that will increase your risk of cancer. In this case, by as much as 18% when we're talking about colorectal cancer if you eat these foods every day.
I didn't realize colorectal cancer was the 3rd leading cause of death among cancers.
It is, and it's the 3rd most common cause of cancer for men and women.
Treating meat with carbon monoxide allows the meat to keep its freshly ground red color, even though the meat may have spoiled. I have a picture on the screen. There's 2 packages of ground meat that were left out at room temperature for 27 hours. You can see the one which was treated with carbon monoxide looks fresh and red, while the other meat has turned brown and quite nasty looking.
Congressman Stupak and Congressman Ed Markey have introduced legislation that would require meat treated with carbon monoxide to be labeled so the consumer would know. According to the industry, 2/3 of all meat and chicken is no longer cut by a butcher in front of customers or in back of the supermarket case. Now, pre-packaged, case-ready meat is prepared off-site at large distributors and then shipped to supermarkets. The carbon monoxide treatment keeps meat looking fresh in that process. Food experts say a pound of ground beef cut by a butcher goes brown in 4 to 5 days. But meat treated with carbon monoxide by a meat packer can stay looking fresh for weeks.
It's a problem because consumers aren't informed about how meat is treated. The meat is being treated with chemicals so that it's going to look like it's fresher than it is.
If it's been salted, cured, fermented, processed in some way to, have it preserved for a longer period of time, that's processed meat, not a good thing in terms of your cancer risk. Not just colorectal cancer, but they saw some links with even prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer as well.
This is one of the big changes in our diets, especially in America, say in my lifetime.
They said on average American men these days eat about 100 grams of meat per day, and we're saying that the risk is as much as increased with just 50 grams per day.